Hi guys, Misty here. Now that we've finished Set Your Sail and have had some time to process it, let's discuss it. I won't be recapping anything in this video, so if you haven't finished Set Your Sail, maybe click out now and come back when you finished it so you don't get any spoilers. Also, please remember everything in this video is just my opinion, so don't take it too seriously or anything. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So with a story that was so full of action, it left my head spinning at times. I find it almost comical that the part that needs addressing most was the calmest part of the story. I'm of course talking about the big pink elephant in the room, the reveal that Pipp's first name is actually Philomena. But y'all went crazy with the reveal, and for days, YouTube was buzzing with opinions and comments about it. Some of you took to it immediately, others did not. Some thought it was weird that the name was announced by being displayed on a letterhead. And then there's the question on if it can even be considered canon or not. Now that I've had a week to think on it, I personally don't hate the name. I think it might be a bit too formal and stuffy for a girl like Pipp, but that could be why she uses a nickname. I also find it amusing that Pipp's real name is the same as Celestia's Phoenix. Makes me wonder what they'll reveal next. Maybe Sunny is short for Sunshine? Sunshine Star Scout does sound adorable. As for the reveal itself, I agree that does leave some to be desired. It felt a little bit like an afterthought, if I'm being honest. As for the question on if the name can be considered canon. So, with the G4 comics, the official consensus was that all events could be considered canon, except when they were a contradiction to the show. There's nothing here that would contradict Tell Your Tale or Make Your Mark. If anything, it supports Tell Your Tale, mentioning the board trot and Nova Charm in the first issue. So if the same rules for the G4 comics apply to G5, then I think we can consider the name canon, at least for the time being. Characterization. For the most part, I was pleased with the way everyone who had a role in here was portrayed. Pipp and Zip really shined, showing the best parts of their characters. Pipp's compassion was on full display, empathizing with the pirates even after they abducted her and Izzy off the train. Likewise, Zip's detective skills were spot on. I also love how it shows the contrast between the two sisters, showing Pipp is led by her emotions, while Zip is much more logic-driven. Izzy remained a source of light and optimism throughout, and while she did have her off-the-wall moments, they were mostly held in check, so she wasn't portrayed as like this Pinkie Pie clone over here. Don't get me wrong, I love Pinkie. But if I were ever kidnapped with her, I'd probably end up tossing myself into the trenches. So kudos to the writers for finding a good balance. I don't have much on Hitch, Misty, and Sunny. They didn't really play that big of a role, but they seemed fine for the little bit that we saw them. The only character that was off was Queen Haven. Though now that I've read the entire story, I do wonder if the Ersatz enchantment played some part of her ignorance. The first issue was the letter she allegedly received from Calla Lily, the repetitive writing, spelling errors, and basically demanding she send Pipp should have been a major red flag. No queen is going to send another queen a letter that poorly written. But Haven just says, "Oh, you can take Izzy." No royal guards, no protection, just sends her younger daughter and her friend down into the unknown. What could happen, right? Later on, she receives the text from Pipp. My guess is the fake text probably looked genuine at first due to it being sent via Ersatz. This is supported by issue 3 when Zip is showing the message to Anemone and she notices Izzy's mane and Pipp's crown are wrong, as well as Pipp's extra hoof. So with that knowledge, I will give Queen Haven a pass for the text. It was intended to fool everyone, and it served its purpose. at least for a little while. In addition to the characters we already know, we were introduced to a bunch of new characters. The first two prominent characters to be introduced are the sisters, Queen Calla and Princess Anemone of the Sparkling Sea. And I'm just going to say it. I loved watching Calla character development throughout. It was reminiscent of the kind of growth G4 was known for. I don't usually like comparing the two series. G4 is G4 and G5 is G5. But this is a positive thing. At the start, we see Calla as a bit manipulative. She sends Haven a fake message telling her Pipp and Izzy are fine, even though in reality, she has no clue where they are. She is proud, she's graceful, she's in control, except she's not. As each chapter progresses, she breaks a bit more. It brings me back to Izzy's onion analogy, except Calla is the onion. As the layers are slowly peeled away, you see Calla as just a frightened little girl struggling to play the part of a queen. The pressures of maintaining the sparkling sea are getting to her, and she's confused and frightened of the thought of losing everything. It doesn't excuse her behavior, but her owning up to her mistakes in the end and being willing to fix them makes her a lot more likable than some of the other characters. It's hard to dislike someone for simply trying to protect her home, even if it was a misguided attempt. That's not to say Anemone was not an interesting character. She didn't go through the same levels of growth as her sister, but really, she didn't need to. The princess had a sort of innocence to her that I really appreciated. She was open, honest, kind, and curious. It's no wonder she hit it off with Zip so well. Maybe too well. I was kind of hoping Anemone and Zip would become a couple because their chemistry was amazing. She also took the most beatings throughout the series, first by Zip slamming into her and making her drop her coffee. Then she bashed her head on a rock. And then Calla spell gone wrong sucked her into a storm. And yet, she still bounced back, which I think is meant to show that she's more resilient than her sister. Moving along to the trench ponies, there were quite a few introduced, but only 3 characters that had more than 1 or 2 speaking lines. The very first trench pony mentioned by name is Creeping Jenny. She's the writer of the Galloping Ghost books and self-proclaimed scribe of the seas. I honestly can't say much about her. She seems to have been put in charge of watching the young trench ponies after their parents vanished. And maybe she also knew Maris would one day awaken to her rightful role as queen, but they just didn't do enough with her to fairly judge her. The next character that we see is the first one that's actually shown, and that's Captain Starboard. She's the initial leader of the Triple G and the one who appears to be behind the pony napping of Pipp and Izzy. Despite this, she seems friendly enough, quickly assuring Pipp that they have no intentions of hurting her and explaining they need her help. She seems a bit serious, yet also playful somehow too, a little like Captain Solano in the My Little Pony movie. Sadly, after the 3rd issue, we don't see a whole lot of her. Another character who had more potential than they were given. Lastly, we have Maris the Crow, the one who stole the story from Pipp in the last chapter. She's the queen of the Shadow Sea, though her powers are initially dormant. She's portrayed as friendly, playful, kind, and loyal to her crew, so much that the crew entrusts her to guard their most valuable possessions. Also off topic, but look at Hitch just casually checking her out. We know his type, slim, short-haired, and a little tomboyish. All jokes aside, though, it was fun watching Maris grow into her role over the course of the books. I really liked Maris from the beginning, and while her story arc wasn't really surprising, it was enough to keep my interest. So, next thing, art. I'm not an artist myself, but I appreciate the artwork in this mini-series. I love the different body types, tail styles, and appearances of the trench ponies. One thing I found kind of interesting is how androgynous most of the ponies looked. I initially thought Starboard was a male. The only ones who looked traditionally feminine were Calla Lily and Anemone, and later on Maris, when she becomes a queen. I suspect this is intentional, a way to differentiate the royals from the commoners immediately. But maybe I'm just overthinking it. The last thing I'm going to touch on is the story itself. I won't get too much into it since I left comments on it the whole way through, but one thing I appreciated was the lack of a villain. Not every story needs an Opaline or a Laura to keep it moving. Calla Lily played her role as an antagonist perfectly, in my opinion. My main gripe with the story, honestly, was just how fast it moved. It was like non-stop from issue 2 on. Like, bam, they're kidnapped. Oh, Zip's here. Trench ponies. Lies, deceit, more lies. Let's make everyone see ponies. Surprise, you're a queen. Save the oceans now. If it had slowed down just a bit, gave some room to breathe, it would have been perfect. In any case, that gripe is small. Set Your Sail's my favorite of the G5 comics. But that's enough on what I think. It's not a true discussion without your opinions. So what did you guys think? Sound off in the comments.